Yeah, I thought I would just do basically a continuation of the previous video about this massive, unbelievably, unbelievably big prank that I've been, not voluntarily. It's I mean I've just been involved, affected by. That's I guess that's key in being pranked. You're not voluntarily participated in it, and it's ongoing, and it's been for years, and it's so extreme that unfortunately it's actually hard to persuade people that it's true, and I don't really think people will believe me when I tell about it. But that's the but how why would it happen? Why would there be, I don't know if it's $1 billion, but $1 million behind it? Well, there has to be a good reason for it, and the reason has to be there is some value in it. I mean, you don't, well, you can, if you have insane amount of money, you can do that just for fun, I guess. And I think it is for fun, partly, but it's also for a purpose. And I think the underlying purpose is marketing. Actually, it's a story. I mean, if it's really sick, or it's not sick but twisted, extreme enough, it can get attention, and it can basically marketing and attention comes from some interactive story, something that's basically shocks you, or at least evoke emotions. And the best thing to keep someone interested in something is building a story, or yeah, human emotion. And this is definitely about human emotions. All this whole big as prank, it's insane. And it is hard for me to talk about it, because it seems that as if I'm insane talking about it, because it's so hard to believe, actually. And it's taken quite a long time for me to see that it's actually real, so to speak. And it's also, part of it is that it's so subtle, and it's basically made out of sort of hints. And it started with actually me thinking I was criminals hunting me and stuff. And yeah, you could say, well, did you just imagine that, or what? But that's I get sort of death threats and stuff, which I found out later on was for a month or something. And then I figured, okay, that was not the it actually was just empty threats. It wasn't even right, like uh, it was meant for the story, I guess, because I still don't like have contact with those who, I think, I'm pretty sure who's behind it, because I were in the US for many years ago, and this actually happened. I explained this in a previous video. It's actually not initiated, but one of the boldest step I made sort of 3 months after it initiated happened to be exactly 67 days after, or sorry, months, so it's a long time, 67 months after I enrolled in a program called 67 Steps, which was 67 days. But now it went for, so 67 months after, or let's say 64 months, or 3, 4, yeah, something like that. This sort of thing initiated, but I made a bold move, sort of. I actually went home to a family and sort of tried to figure stuff out. I was sort of tricked into do sort of lots of tons of stuff, but that was sort of an extremely bold move. That was quite, I mean, uh, and that was exactly 67 months. I was tricked into do that. And the interesting thing is that what was the 67th step, the last step in that program? Well, it was about courage. So I did something extremely courageous, even though I was tricked into doing it. I basically thought I was sort of invited, even though that's quite sick to because I thought that that person inviting me here in Sweden was part of the prank, and that was why I went there, because I thought that that was sort of the ending of it, so to speak. That person invited me, and they were just saying, "Oh, okay, yeah, I was part of this," and sort of so on and so forth. But that turned out they were also being pranked. They were being pranked by me. They had no, like, it was planned for them. I have tons of evidence that um, meant to be a part of this, so to speak. Um, but they get pranked by me. Just a random guy, sort of. They have it. What's initiated 3 months before was sort of a first contact with those people, and then I went there, and then yeah, they sort of, that was sort of shocking for them, for me just to show up, and the circumstances around it made them sort of afraid of me. So I pranked them, but this was not my intention. I was tricked to doing that by those who organized the prank, basically. You could call it prank. You could also call it, I don't know, just a messy thing, a big story. And there are many things in this that's extremely. And I thought about this in the last video. I said, "Well, wouldn't it be a coincidence that all this happened if, like, for example, about 100 months?" And I counted on it and figured, well, no, it's not. But I made a mistake. That is actually true. It is 100th months right now, which happened to be another extremely bold move I made that was also in sort of good faith, as it was a good thing, and it turned out the same way, that it was like even more hostile than the first time. But it actually, the reason I counted on was that I was mistaken, that it was 67 months to when this initiated. It was not, it was 63, but it was 67, like the program, when I first made this extremely bold move, which was 3 months later of the initiation, to just go home to a random people like that, even though I thought I was sort of invited. They tricked me to believe that. And but so when I changed for that it actually was when I did that move, because I based on the calculation on that that it was when it initiated, which it was not, which was 3 months later. And then it turns out the boldest insane move I made sort of in a couple of days ago, tricked into doing it again, was actually 100 months exactly after I initiated the program. I figured out that afterwards. I tried to do in the video, last video, when I talked about it. And that's a quite long time if you imagine. I mean, it's more than 5 years. So this is really big. And the reason it can be big is because they didn't know who I was when it began, when I enrolled in the program. Like, it was, and I don't mean that everyone who's in the 67 steps program, maybe they I would guess they've done, maybe they're doing it to many people. I guess they're doing it on, perhaps they took 67 weeks or something. I don't know. But that's like 4 times as short. So I guess they practiced before they did this. But anyway, so I was quite shocked and sort of, I don't know, happy. And the funny thing is, well, okay, 67 step was about courage. I guess there were no more than 67 steps. But anyway, it was an extremely courageous thing to do as well. Only this time it was not one person, and this time they recognized me and the same emotions, and they all just go haywire. And for me, it's like, yeah, I can laugh at it, but I'm also sympathetic with them. Like, for them, they think I'm insane or just weird and stuff. And there are also other things that I've done that I sort of want to. They have some stuff that's mine that's was happened between those two, 67th month and the 100th month. It's been a while now, so they thought it so moved on, forget about me, which I did not think. But I thought they were sort of aware of me, but uncertain, sort of, and wanted to know whatever. And but the reason I thought that is because those who sort of those who how should you express it, are behind this project wanted me to think that it's part of the game, so to speak, and which I personally think is I mean, there is some part of it that I've not discussed, which is too hard for people to digest, I think, because it's quite really extreme. and but yeah, I don't know. It's but they at least got quite a surprise, you see. And it also what was interesting was this is some people, um, and but only one person lives at that place that I went to, and I guess that was the most likely that that person had it. The things that were mine, and I also I wanted those things back, and I postponed it because I just thought, well, I figured out later on, and I hope they not throw it away because that would be not devastating. But basically, I really I don't like throwing away stuff. I really so anyway, but so it was. I mean, that person lived there, and I thought that was most likely that that person had it, so I went there, and for some other reasons too, because I was sort of tricked into stuff. But that was sort of what I brought up when I came there. But what was interesting it was that well, I don't want to explain all the details, so I sort of will go through it in a sort of a general manner. And so what I can say is that it would not be likely that more people than that person would, because depending on the relationship with other people, it would be quite too rare a coincidence that two others of that constellation of people would be at that place at the precise moment when I went there. I mean, it could happen, but it's still extremely rare to think. And I think it is sort of a good thing that they were together there. I mean, some usually people, as I've said many times in my life, that I don't think that in these videos, I don't think we're built to be in one sort of living alone in a household for ourselves. You could do that for a time, but I think it's not. I don't think it's healthy. I actually think it contributes to stress. We're built to be around people continually, forever. Sort of. We talked about it in another video. And this person lived alone, and same people, only what is it? 60, 100 minus 65, 60. Yeah, 33 basically months later. But another place where one of these people lived alone, and the other people don't live there, but they happen to be there when I showed up. And so I know that that's too much of a coincidence. It was sort of meant to happen. That was and I sort of want to figure out what the heck this is all about. And for me, since I'm pushed toward this these people through this sort of prank, I'm sort of hinted at this is the way forward or something like that, and I don't know why. For me, it's like, okay, I could just go on. I sort of want to, but it's still like, why am I pushed in that direction? And they don't want me to show up and just do weird stuff. This seems like I portray myself as someone who's easily tricked, but if you consider how much money it's behind now, smart minds and sort of billionaires or really rich people behind it, so yes, and how much planning, like years for doing this, you can sort of. I sort of pride myself on not being easily tricked, so it's reasonable that they can succeed if they put so much effort into it. Where were I? One thing I wanted to, coincidence. So why one thing I would want to sort of know about, because I had some contact, they were worried about me or why I'm doing this. And so one thing I forgot, or what I want to sort of talk about with them, is what was the reason that they were there? Because I mean, it could happen. There are many things that I've been sort of tricked into doing. That's sort of not that there's not been needing a sort of big thing. Because the thing here is, I want them to understand what they are actually affected by and how much their lives are is actually manipulated. You can that's one way to put it. For good or bad, I mean, I think this is long term sort of a good thing, but short term, it's quite a lot of pain and discomfort. That's not necessarily good at all times, I think, but they seem to have another opinion about that. Those who are behind them, this, and they that's their conscience, not mine. And so, what I need, so the thing is, they're being tricked to doing stuff that they don't even know that they are tricked into doing, but it's not sort of devastating things like for example, but or I guess, but there is sort of there are many indications. I can see stuff that has happened in their at least one of their those pieces, yeah, person's life that indicate that they have been directed in that direction in their career. And but for me to say that to someone who doesn't even know that they're being sort of steered into different things in life, and even I think they're acting in their own free will, it's sort of an insult. And why would I not like? But at the same time, if it's an intelligent person, the person would at least listen to the argument. But since they're so sort of hostile to me, since all these things that have happened, I think I'm a sort of idiot or crazy even. It's hard for me to persuade, really. And but one way that I could do it is if there's something really because I don't know how much time they had for. I mean, it's monthly based, so I don't know how much time they had for sort of planning that they would have to be there, because I don't know if I was manipulated to go there at this exact time, or if it just what's important was if it happened this month. And if the kid didn't know exactly how to manipulate me to go the exact day, then they wouldn't have time to sort of make them go. So they had to do something drastic that would force those two people to go there for some extreme reason. So, but unfortunately, I think it might have been planned, even when I was showing up, so it would not seem as an extreme event. They sort of, and that's sort of the backside of it, and then they won't know the reason. But if there's some because they then will be like okay, well, we just went here because blah blah blah, but they don't know that the reason they went there was because it has been planned for a very 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 long time. I mean, it is the 100th month after I enrolled in the first program, so they basically have 5 years to plan so that this would happen at the exact this date that I went there when they were there. So, and then it probably won't be needed that sort of just to make sure that I went at the same date. It's enough. And so, and then you wouldn't need an extreme thing that happened, and then don't have any evidence, at least not that as an evidence, and that's a bad thing. But yeah, that's how it is. And the reason I want to persuade them is because I want them sort of on my side, investigating what the heck this is all about, and sort of, yeah, because I'm involved in it and it's a big part of my life, even though I'm living my life and doing what I want to do in life. But it is sort of something that's behind that's some messy stuff that's quite, yeah, painful, really, really painful. And always with this sort of calm, not reassuring, but just sort of silent promise that this will end up in something good that I'm not even sure it will. And that's like makes it even more, because it's still, even if it's I'm sort of living my life and I can't or channel it out, I know that in some places I would be much more ahead or have been a better place in life if it wasn't for these things, and that's not good. And it's always been like, okay, this time I will sort of just skip it and do my thing, and I'm still doing. But if they put so much money and effort, if you think about it, so many rich people behind it, and therefore they have the money to pay even more, like I don't know, thousands, people in investigating and sort of planning and directing my life. It's like, does it really matter what I do? So it's sort of an learned helplessness challenge, sort of. But because does it really matter? I mean, I still think it does, of course, but it will still affect me a lot, of course, especially since I guess many of these people are quite deep into everything with the internet and stuff that may like manipulating my algorithm and everything. And as I mentioned, I think in a previous one, that sort of many of them are behind many of the great social media companies and sort of have involved in them and have contacts with them because it's really high level people in the US. So yeah, and so that makes it like when I'm searching for a job, for example. That's the one thing, and that's one thing that's quite drastic in that person, the other person that's been involved, pranked with this thing that doesn't even know that they are being pranked. They just think I'm a weird guy showing up now and then. They get extremely upset about it. I know for sure that that person, what the person, the place they're working at, has so much in common in what happened in the initial stage in this prank that it can't be any coincidence that that person works. So that person even don't even know. As I said, it's hard to persuade someone that they are affected in the decision making if they're, and especially if they come with the explanation. Well, this is the world's biggest prank, and your whole life is sort of being. I mean, it sounds like you're insane. So that's why I'm sort of low in hope. Not low in hope, but I understand the challenge of persuading people. Let's watch is that it's actually true, and it's even more hard, like for the one being affected by it, because you don't want to believe that your life is someone pulled the strings in your life. I mean, that's, and on top of that, if someone does, is that a good thing? I mean, you want to live your life. We have freedom to do whatever we want, and why would someone? So it's that's a bit of a challenge, and I'm not really. I've sort of laid that out in a letter, and it's along with a lot of other things, but it sounds so extreme. And actually had a phone call with one of them just after this incident. They called me by mistake. They thought it was another person's number, but they, yeah, we could talk it through. But I don't think I conveyed the whole sort of magnitude, the how extreme and big this is. Hopefully, I don't know if they probably think I'm insane and sneaking around and therefore sort of perhaps afraid, and then will probably hopefully sort of sneak around and find this video. I don't know. I would, if I was affected by some strange person just showing up, I would sort of wonder what the heck is this all about. Who is this guy, and what and sort of try to find out who he is and what the heck is making him do this, so we don't have to be sort of afraid, or I don't know, or they just leave it as it is, and I don't know really. But since it's been so long time and it happened again, I would actually be quite sort of concerned, because if it have been years and it happens again, I would think, well, how do we know that it won't be 2 years again? And he shows up and just and so then I would actually be quite concerned. And since I'm actually talking about hopefully they find this video and you realize, well, he is actually talking the truth, or he thinks, or they think he's insane. I'm insane, but and that's sad if they think, because if they think that, then they're wrong, and it's never good for yourself to be wrong. I mean, if that's actually affecting you and people you care about and so forth. So I mean, like people getting involved in your life and steering your career, you would, of course, you want to know it, and especially you want to figure out what the heck. I mean, I know a ton more than they do, so I would be. They would have an incentive to talk with me, I lay it out in this video, and I don't know if they will find it, but I mean, if I were in their situation, I would find it, and I happen to value some of my behavior. I mean, it's just a sound thing to do. So if they don't, it's sort of an indication for me that perhaps I don't value them too much, so to speak, or at least I can move on and just think, well, they're just people who don't investigate things properly, and I don't know. I would, and I think it's a good thing to sort of go into depth into things that are sort of weird. I mean, you have to sort of figure out what the heck is this, and so yeah. But the thing is, even if they do, would they believe me when I talk about it, or would I just seem? I think it's sort of a. It's partly my ability to just honestly talk about it. It's and also my sort of how well I can persuade, and also how I guess not come off as insane. I mean, you have to read people. You have to be able to read people to understand if they're sharp, if they're honest, and if they're and sharp in a way of sort of not being trick their own brain to believe stuff that are insane. But it's also partly their responsibility to be sharp enough to understand a valid, good argument when it's portrayed. And uh, and I think one of the best way to understand why this is actually happening is, well, one thing is this sort of, I mean, it's reasonable to think that huge, big initiatives can be made in the world, creating a store. I mean, it's if you really want to make a big, extreme, like sort of story thing that will draw the whole world's eyes towards it, you would do something like this. It's actually very reasonable. And also in addition to that, I would just say, uh, if you think about the story in a movie, for example, are the people in the story happy? Or are they sort of concerned? Is this sort of an challenging thing to go through? Is there sort of conflicts? Yeah, I mean, most movies or whatever it is about antagonists. Is a problem, and that's a part of it. What's hard is what makes it great, sort of, as the saying goes. It's sort of, I mean, doesn't mean that we should have pain and suffering in the world, but in order to make a story, I guess, I mean, most stories, whatever it is extremely challenging for the people involved. And I guess that's how you make, and that's what people think is interesting. Unfortunately, we would like to see people struggling and in pain and confrontation with people. I mean, how many movies is not about war? And what's the most read topic in history is usually about, unfortunately, about war and stuff, and conflict and power struggles and whatever it is. Now, this is not really about that, but it's still about people. I mean, if you think about reality things, shows or movies, drama, it's always about sort of, yeah, people. eh, It's never like, and they live happily ever after. That's afterwards, but it's never their story. It's never just, oh, this is great and we don't have any problems to solve and we can just chill out and have fun. Unfortunately, that's not how you build a story. I don't think this is not a sort of an argument for why this is a good thing in general. I mean, I don't think, in some sense, I don't think that if you knew how much pain this actually inflicts on me and on other people, and even the piece stuff that's sort of not connected yet too much to them, but unfortunately, it could be connected to them in a way that's quite bad for them. It's just that they don't know if it's going to happen things, or if it's it all, or the thing have sort of quite bad things have already happened that they didn't know someone was behind it. But for me, it's like those things. I don't know if they've been affected. I know that I've been affected by that. That's sort of not necessarily connected with them, but they could be, as I said, because they could have been affected by it, but they don't know it. Those things are stuff that I don't mention in this video because it's too hard to digest. It's quite. It's not quite. It's really serious. Um, and that's sort of also gives sort of a hint of the magnitude of this. What they're how big has this actually have to be to justify these things that have been done? And the answer is it has to be something really, really, unless it's just not really bad people behind it. But I don't think, well, after this has happened, I really thought of describing them that way. I don't think it's sort of super nice people, actually, to be honest, because I think they lack in moral and ethics. Because I don't think really that they just and justify the means. Usually, it depends on the means in the end, but I think the means is way too crooked, or what? How do you call it? Too. I would not do it. So there's one thing more I thought about that I just forgot, but yeah, that's my forgot what it was, but yeah, I'm not sure if I have to speak too much about it more. This is just a continuation of another one. Although to clarify, I laid out some sort of evidence or indication for why this has actually happened. I'm not sort of making this up in a previous video that I named. I think I just named it "This is big" for some reason, because yeah, an actual focus on this prank, and that's what's big. And that video I usually just wing it when I do this video. So that's was actually a conversation about something else in our society. That's I don't know how prevalent it is. I just been sort of drawn into this through this prank, which is super bad thing if it's done. At least if it's done too much. So the first part of the video, I don't know how much, perhaps half or something, is dedicated to that, and the second part is basically about this prank. Although I don't know if I'll talk about this prank in this video. Maybe I will just do like I've done in many of these videos since I just started this 7 years ago when it's just been recordings of all my thoughts and things I've read and. But one way to do it is actually, I mean, if you think about like for me, this is stuff I want to figure out, understand what the heck is it all about, and you can draw many topics into it, like so from I don't know, like for example, these people I've sort of went back and forth if they're sort of the only reason for me to focus so much was, let's put it this way, the only reason for the people behind this wanting me to focus so much on these people must be that they're either really bad or really good in some way. I mean, unless it's just for a story and it's not really like matters. But and it's some things in that, yeah, it's actually a family. I was not sure if I should say it, but I continue to say these people. Once something that's sort of quite positive, something that perhaps not super positive as well, but but the main thing is that it's hard to know, and that's in line with the science on this. And as I said, portrayed in other videos, that we usually overestimate our capabilities of reading people. We think even we can see a video and get sort of a hinge of those. And there's a lot of evidence on this. Like, for example, extroversion is very easy to see. I mean, how extroverted is someone. But if you take the other big five, and actually do it in the Hexaco system, which has the H factor, honest humility, the only factor really that's sort of you can portray as good or bad. I mean, conscientiousness is also sort of only good if it's high and bad if it's low. But extroversion, sorry, openness to experience and agreeable, that's more, it's not cutting clear what's good. But this is sort of basically honest humility is hardest to detect, and it's takes most time with that people to understand how much treachery and deceit there is in their personality, how low they are in honesty and in humility. And so that sort of makes it it's sort of a relief for me, at least, to know that I'm not. It doesn't mean. I mean, as I said, most of us want to think that we're good at understanding how bad a person is or how good that person is if you just watch a video or something. But it's actually, we fool ourselves too much, because we have to sort of get to a conclusion in order to go on in life. And for the people who are quite bad at hiding their deceptive behavior and their ethics and their stuff like that. I mean, it's good that we can read them. You say, or get away with each to read them that they were bad, and that's a good thing. But when it's not certain, it takes a while, I guess, and it's. But what's important is that I think one thing is important to have in mind. Many people have a sort of exaggerated view of themselves in some way, and it's sort of natural, and sometimes you can even say it's a good thing. I mean, the narcissist trait is more common among men, and it's up to a degree, it's actually good for yourself, because I mean, you could say that about all these narcissists, Machiavellians, and psychopathy, that there's sort of some advantage in having not too low of it, but it definitely should not be too high, because then that's even worse. I mean, for that, then you're harming yourself and other people. But sort of being, I have an argument about this in another video that goes more in depth, but you could say sort of that people are very good at seeing if you're lying, but if you fool yourself to believe the lie that you're really good, people will actually think it, that you are. So that's sort of a narcissistic thing, that you think you're so good that people, that you don't have to lie when you say how good you are, or sort of convey in some way. It's just obvious that you're so good, so people actually believe it because they, that's sort of, I think I read some akin to that in the Folly of Fools that I have on my shelf there, from Robert Trivers, evolutionary biologist. Sort of, I don't remember exactly what he thought, but that's sort of akin to that, and my translation is that could be applied to sort of narcissistic traits. But in too much of it is, of course, why I went into that. I just lost my. Yeah, about overconfidence, or what Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's business partner, called it before he passed away. Excessive self-regard. You really think of yourself really highly. I guess that's basically narcissism. I think that applies. There is an interesting study about drivers in Sweden, car drivers in Sweden, and they with the result they sort of how do you they from 1 to 10 or something like that, ranked their own skills in driving, and they found that 90% thought they were better than average. And you can tell by that that's not true. They're wrong about their skills in driving. They think higher of themselves than is true. And it's quite funny if you think about it. Everyone goes around and think, wow, I'm so good. that's how people. And it's also sort of sad that we have to think of ourselves too highly to get by in life. I guess that's how we roll as human beings. Just think we're amazing. It's have an internal story that portrays, and that's also true at the same time when people are sort of deeply depressed as well, and have low confidence and stuff, and that's an interesting. But anyway, and I think this definitely applies to being able to read people. I think it's, you want to believe that you're really good at reading people. You want to believe that I can see if that person is sharp. I can see if that person is deceptive. I can see if that person is kind. But the truth is, we overestimate those capabilities. We have to make a sort of, I mean, some decisions you have to make. I mean, if you got some signals of someone is super weird, that is even sort of physical danger, and the first time you see that person, yeah, it's good that you can see that there's hint, even if it's not a bad dangerous person. It's quite good if you sort of avoid that situation, but you can't do that all the time. But we all always need to sort of bet on what's a good way to act. But usually, like, it's not that extreme, so you sort of get some time and you get to know someone and you've seen them for a while, and then you sort of understand how, if it's a. But as I've mentioned in another video, it takes a long time until you really know how these sort of actually even more important things about. So that's sort of an relief for what. How should you put it? I don't have to feel bad about not knowing exactly if these people are as good as would justify this extreme effort for me to focus on them. Because why would they deserve so much? That's why I thought actually they could be sort of extremely bad people. Only that it doesn't really. That could be. I mean, if you're really manipulative or really low on those sort of honesty, humility, you could make a really, and you're really sharp as well. I mean, you could even be criminal and live in sort of a life that seems ordinary, but you're not. You're actually like really bad. So, and I don't still know, but there's some impulsiveness in that made me sort of realized in this last. That could just be fear or overprotection. That would be. I don't. Hard to know if it should be classified as overprotection, but I mean, you care about people. That's something, but I still think it's sort of yeah. But I don't think it's overprotection in a good way. Let's say, but or not in a good way. Now, with good intention, that sort of to a degree is good, but after a while it just becomes bad for oneself to be not sort of calm and reasonable, and sort of you build yourself into sort of inhibit yourself and people around you, perhaps, if you're too. Anyway, I don't know, but and I don't know how much I'm going to talk about this time, as I've said, but it is really interesting, and perhaps I should just bring up some things about this that's interesting. Perhaps there are some things that I leave out on purpose because it's sort of part of it is sort of half of sort of embarrassing or just or extreme in a way that's too hard to digest for people, and but perhaps I could think about something that would indicate that this is actually happening. I mean, it's quite enough for me to just know that it's those for 67 months and then 100 months. And I mean, since I enrolled in program, it's like, for me, that's I think most people will think, yeah, why would that really would be a can just be a coincidence. That's the only time I've face to face met them, even though it was actually not the same. I actually met exactly those people I had not met face to face earlier, and I met. So now I've met them all. When is it like that? Is that a coincidence? Like, come on, it can't be. I mean, if it's another thing if it were every one of them, but now it's just the rest of them, and that's also sort of can't be a coincidence. At least if it added up, like first, yeah. So quite a relief to understand that it actually I did just can't I counted sort of wrong last time, and it was actually the 67th month was not when it's initiated, but a month after when I actually met them, or one person in this group, And now at the 100th month, I met the other ones face to face. Coincidence. You have to be quite dumb to think it's not a coincidence. So unless you're dumb, you have to think I'm right and be shocked, or think I'm trying to fool you to think all these things, which is sort of, why would I do that? To get attention, I guess that would be a. I just try to imagine why someone would do that. But no, it's not a coincidence. What more? I don't know. Yeah, there's sort of some subtle promises in all this, and sort of there's something about that. Those that well, one person there that sort of it's a mix of uh, quite not bad things, but sort of things that are I don't want to be true, that I would not really care about too much if if it was just without this sort of prank thing. I would not really put. I would put value on it a lot, but it would not be a sort of. It would not be extremely important in the sense that it's just a, what do you call it? And this is sort of a promise, so to speak, or in all this prank, that there's sort of an what do you call it? Pivot? No, sort of an zenith or an ending that will be some great, and sort of a subtle promise of. But the thing is, I have so many indication that this is not true from that person, and sort of not like met them, but this indication, but what's interesting is I know how skewed their picture of me is. So it's probable that they have been sort of tricked into either sort of lie or indicate in a sort of false way some things that's actually not true, and that if that's not true, then it becomes what I sort of have been sort of promised to will be a reality or something that's good in the end of all this prank. And that's a bit challenging because it's but it's challenging in some way, but it's also like if it wasn't for all this, I would not really, yeah, I would put very high value on it, but it would not be something that I sort of, there's a word for it, it would not be an issue or sort of a, so it's sort of weird. But if you start to value something, or sort of get a promise of something, it's sort of you start to value it in some ways, and it's yeah, sort of a but yeah, again, since they have so skewed the picture of me, it's not unreasonable to think that I have sort of a, that these things have been planted there to make me doubt that it actually is as good as is as I want to believe. But again, it's like from their perspective, it seems as if they don't really. They just think of sort of what the heck is that guy again? And for me, it's like, yeah, but it's not me doing all. I mean, it's me, but it's not my wish to be involved in this in the first place. I've just been involved in it, and I can't sort of. It's so extreme. It's all these things that have been done on the internet, and even in society, like people I watch, like that's been planted, like. And yeah, you could say, okay, yeah, that's. But if if we would know what it is, maybe I could take now some example. I don't know. But it is too much of a coincidence that it's they've been paid to be there. They've been paid to make that impression. it's just a strong indicator, and you have to be, yeah, whatever. And something more on this. There was something I was thinking about that I forgot, but not sure if I had to make some extremely long one, this sequence. And since I'm quite new into this mode of publishing thing, that's sort of not with the intention just for myself. And this is, and again, if someone has seen something, I think it's sort of, as I said, I think the people behind it, some of them, I think, sort of own YouTube or other platforms and stuff. So I don't think this will. I don't know if this is going to affect the algorithm. But that doesn't matter so much. If people finding it anyway. If people find it and sort of not by a sort of algorithm, but actually search for me or for other reasons, find this, which can't be too many people, but and they have noticed something that's sort of odd. I mean, I'm not in this alone, but sort of. It's quite hard to persuade people, and I guess you have to be quite sharp to understand that it's actually that's why I laid out sort of some evidence of this in my previous video on this. That's about another topic as well, but that sort of started to happen, and I get aware of more in when all this happens. So it's sort of, and it builds sort of around that problem with sort of, yeah, letters and stuff, and that's why it invites misunderstandings. We're sort of at the, how do you make a good story about people and just weird stuff? Yeah, you invite a lot of misunderstandings and stuff, and false promises or indication, and then especially when you don't know how much people are manipulated to do something in their real life. You don't know if that the person is doing it for their own drive or if they're doing it for, yeah, whatever. So I guess that's just an argument for genuine, straightforward conversation in order to achieve something in life in general. Just, I mean, that's a topic that I thought I would really go too deep into. Again, I mean, it's so doing something about your life, doing something epic, something, trying to do something. This is, yeah. But I think it's perhaps some more sort of evidence or some that's sort of, at least a reasonable smart people can understand that, well, this is not, I think it's enough with these sort of months. I mean, 67 months and then 100 months is like, yeah. And but perhaps more of an to call it over big picture argument again is this with, why would someone do it? Because yeah, if you really want to make a big story, a story that really intrigues people, a story that really affects people deeply emotionally, I mean, one way to do it is sort of record and make it extremely sufferable and weird and a lot of misunderstanding between people, and sort of make them sort of, yeah. And another part of this that's quite hard to speak about, because, and this is the question, why me? And that's quite, and I guess you just have to make your own evaluation of that, because I mean, yeah, I'm just speaking in these videos, and I'm trying to figure things out, and I'm trying to lay things out, and I have skills, and I have abilities, and I have flaws as other all human beings, and you always have to evaluate what do you say, case by case,
a person for what
he or she is, or sort of love. I know what I'm trying to say here, but the trick with this is that it's sort of an extreme thing, lot of suffering. It's a lot of promises, for me at least, that sort of this is going to result in something, and I can't happen to I can't get away from the thought that why would I be involved in this if it wasn't for that I've sort of, should you say, deserve it, or at least, and that's sort of tricky because I know I try to make quite, and this is actually a sort of a challenge that Charlie Munger, or what's it called, exercise that you should go through yourself when you're sort of evaluating. Is actually in a discussion of psychological biases. So you think you're rational, and one this is under the section of excessive self-regard. So, and so it's hard to evaluate yourself and your skills, and I think there's so many skills and general capabilities. You have sort of IQ, you have just emotional intelligence, you have sort of just skills. I mean, I don't know, everything from music to athleticism to just pure brain power to being able to write poems and make stories, like so good great movies, being an actor, or being a, there's so many skills. And where were I lost my train of thought here, but the argument in this is basically you have this actually very important to make a good evaluation of your own skills. It's, I mean, if you believe too highly of yourself or too lowly, you're going to make wrong bets. You're also going to, I mean, on what you're going to do and what achieve and so forth. And you're also going to, um, I mean, it's evident if you're reasonably sharp to understand that if you have something in your all things that you consider when you make different decisions, if you have something, some thought that is quite skewed, that will inevitably affect how you're going to value stuff. I mean, if you have something in your world reality that's sort of too much off, if you think very low of yourself or too high on yourself, for example, it's quite obvious that you're not going to make the best decision. The best is to have a, but the good thing is that you can always improve yourself throughout life. That's basically what life is about: to improve yourself as much as you can in all the aspects, from just being knowledge to just ethics and being good contributor. Because that's sort of, I mean, that is duty. If you ask me, that's a moral duty to acquire wisdom and try to do something extraordinary in the world. I think maybe not people can pull it off, but it's to do as much as you can is, for me, I mean, it gives purpose to life, and it's, I think it's a duty. It gives purpose to life, and yeah, just a side note, I guess. But yeah, so a critical evaluation of yourself and your skills, and that's hard, especially if you sort of think of yourself at, yeah, well, perhaps I'm quite can do some bigger stuff, really good stuff. Then you're sort of getting into a realm. Do you have too high thoughts of yourself? And I guess one trick of it is to both believe it at the same time as you have humility and thinking, but I can't know for sure. Sort of that, and that's hard because you actually need the confidence of believing that you can do it. So, and that makes it quite tricky. And so connected to this, why would they do all this? Do I deserve it? Am I so? Why would they do it to me and this person, this family? Why am I? Maybe I'm just one of many who's affected by this. Maybe I'm not the only one. I mean, there are many people involved, but they have sort of other. As far as I've seen, I've not seen anyone with the same position as I am. Maybe there are tons of them. I don't know. That's part of one of the reason I recorded this video for, because I want to understand if Maybe someone has seen something. I don't think they will allow people who actually is affected by this to see it, because it's sort of a integrated thing in all this to not let me get out of this sort of weird setup. But there are definitely other people involved, but I don't know if the playing it's sort of made, as it seemed to me, as I'm the central person in all this, or perhaps this those other people that I just talked about, and that's sort of it's for me it's almost as if, how could you think just high of self to think that you're the one affected, and that's why I sort of just let you be the judge. I deserve all this. You don't know too much about me, but yeah, whatever. So, man, I guess one part of uh, actually make an accurate evaluation if you actually deserve something, and is to actually sort of doubt that you do deserve it. I mean, because then it's more likely that you're actually going to be a person who's going to see that if you are a person on that level that sort of deserves it, or at least uh, and have that ability to doubt if you actually deserves it, as well as believe in yourself, then it's perhaps more likely that you're actually make an accurate, because I can't get around the thought now that perhaps what I hope was sort of true, that I have some unique skills that deserve this story. Perhaps that's true. I don't know, but it's very uncomfortable because it's quite arrogant to say that of yourself, to think that of yourself. So, but I mean, all this millions, perhaps billions of dollars that's behind this. I don't know. It doesn't have to be. It's hard to know all this in on the internet but since I know the people, I'm sort of get quite sure how yeah, how influential people are behind it. It's not unreasonable to think that a huge amount of money behind it, and at least there's a lot of money, because you have to pay all these people just showing up and doing stuff, and you have to pay all people who program this stuff in and messing with the algorithm, and I mean, it's sort of a huge project anyway. But I mean, it's really hard for me to estimate the money that goes into it, and but the effort and the time, yeah, that's um, as I said, we're in the U.S. and visited some people, and I don't know, maybe I made some impression. Um, this is weird to talk about, because it's like, now I happen to have done what's it called, metrics on sort of on, yeah, basically dark triad and so forth, and I'm not I feel myself pretty safe on those things, so I don't, and that sort of is nice for me to sort of know that I'm not too prone to overvaluate my. I can. I'm not sort of. I'm definitely not someone who thinks very lowly of myself. I have some, but on these sort of metrics that on these tests that I did, but I'm not sort of extreme in that direction of thinking I'm a god or something like that. um, I think sort of all of us have some impulse, I guess, to think very highly of ourselves, and I think it's actually quite a good to tap into the, how should you put it, I'm God mode. That sounds very arrogant, but I think those who have that aspect in themselves, I guess it's, and this is actually really interesting when you listen to people who are actually diagnosed with narcissistic trait. They sort of switch between I'm God to I'm worthless mode, and that's interesting to hear, because I can sort of understand that, because I'm not super low on that trait, but I'm not super high, and I have different. I mean, you can break down all these metrics too in different things, and just to be clear, now I'm talking narcissism, and that's very narrow if you take the dark triad test, it actually is distinguished from psychopathy and Machiavellianism. So it's not to be narcissistic is not the same to be as Machiavellian or psychopathic. And you usually, when you think about, you hear someone say, "Oh, he's a narcissist," you just basically think about traits that's characterized a psychopath, but that's not the same thing. I mean, a narcissistic person can have very deep emotion for and empathy for people. You just happen they have a quite heroic sense of self. They think of themselves very highly. They don't have to be manipulative. But that's what a Machiavellian person is. Yeah, they can sort of get together. I mean, if you're really a psychopath, you don't have any empathy basically if someone is just screaming and dying, and then you're more prone to use manipulation because you won't care. But at least in the dark triad, they distinguish those traits. So yeah, I don't think you should reveal too much on these metrics about yourself. Perhaps I don't know if it hurts, but there's always the question of how much you should reveal about yourself and stuff. But it doesn't. I mean, you could be too afraid of sharing things too, and for me, it's so important for one thing to just have a reasonable argumentation about this. If there's some people, intelligent people out there who put the dots together, or have seen something and can help me amazing sort what the heck this is all about. This is quite a puzzle, and is also for me, for myself, just understanding what the heck this is and sort of have some reflections about it and what it's. But so yeah, so I feel quite comfortable that I'm not going to overestimate my capabilities in this, and just. But it is weird because I mean, why the heck do this to me? It's so damn sick almost. It's like, and it's hard to speak about. I very rarely talk about this with people around me because it's, I mean, who would believe me? And so, but now it's out there. So, and perhaps no one will see it. I don't know. Yeah, I think I had some watches on the last one I just did on this, and which went into depth on some of the arguments again, but yeah. So, what more can I bring up? Well, the embarrassment of my earlier videos. Yeah, that's the thing. As I mentioned in another videos, I posted 7 years I've done these videos, but only for myself basically. Some of them are quite in depth into stuff that's not sure that I would actually be comfortable just publishing and stuff, but did it anyway. And I always sort of have back in my head that perhaps I should publish it, because actually why I started was because I heard that a really good way to practice speech or public speaking, like just speech, and a good way to remember stuff. If you read something, actually started out as sort of a repetition for me, reading books, read a book, made a video on it, and so I remember it. That's how you learn stuff, repeating it and discussing it and stuff. So that's what I did, and then just after a while I don't have the time to mention or make a title for it, so I just started with one, video 2, video 3, and that was sort of a year in, and now I think I'm at 250 videos or something, and I just published them for all. I look like a mess, and I'm just sometimes just blanked for 20 minutes, and it's, but now I forgot what else I was about to say, but I lost my train of thought completely here. Oh, sound's coming out. Nice. Yeah, it's really a bit too much, perhaps. So yeah, it's been an hour and 9 minutes. I don't know if I should. I actually think this is extremely good practice of to. Yeah, sure. Yeah, public speaking and So perhaps I'll just continue pushing it, because that's sort of one thing I've done in this video. I don't feel like talking for 3 hours, but if you can actually sort of, especially if you can use knowledge that's good, that's I mean, it's perhaps people, some person that started watching this far, if anyone, uh, thought, well, this is, I'm looking for it because of the details of the prank. Perhaps it gives some indication of if it's actually correct to do this for me, if I sort of give an indication of, or an example of what I usually talk about, and if that sort of, how should you put it, justifies. I mean, you would have to be quite extreme as a person, how your brain works in sort of, I don't know, choosing topics. Like, for example, the longer time I've been in life, it sounds like I was 60 plus or something, but Charlie Munger put it this way: if you do sort of continuous learning and blah blah blah, and Charlie Munger, the Warren Buffett's business partner, basically Bill Gates taught him the most intelligent person, wisest person alive. Now he's dead though, but he put it the way that if you do this and this and this, I don't remember exactly, but basically just acquire wisdom and reading and so forth. You will walk down the road and look to the left and to the right and think, my heavenly days, I've just become, I don't know how I would put it, but is understand how far you've gotten really in sort of understanding and stuff. And that's sort of I guess that's sort of what I'm trying to figure out, but also sort of can, maybe it can give an indication for someone to evaluate if this is sort of a mess. I mean, I'm just an ordinary person, why would this happen? Perhaps something in my thinking skills is actually sort of justifies this sort of a big. I mean, there has to be some reason why I'm picked. Maybe it's just because I'm an asshole. No, I'm not. I'm quite a kind person, but it doesn't have to be a good trait that makes me involved in this, because it's quite much pain in it. But it's also this subtle promise all the time, and I do know of myself that I'm extremely, and I also delve into very, very sensitive topics, and really with ethics try to discern how to make this better, try to understand the world, reading as from the advice of the most intelligent, wisest person on this who walked this earth. Basically, if you ask me, Bill Gates, Schlumberger, read widely, not only one academic discipline, and really develop your brain and not be the man with a hammer, meaning with like from the saying, for the man with a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. If you only schooled in, let's say, economics, or if you only schooled in biology, math, history, you won't have the width of a repertoire to draw from to know when you have to pick up the screwdriver instead of the hammer. You know, or I mean, you would sort of paint your hammer if you only have a pencil. If the pencil is in the only tool you have, and you can't tell a wall from a hammer, you just paint your hammer. I mean, you just that's basically how insane you would be if you're very. I mean, this goes back to Adam Smith, and usually people think of him as sort of it was for the father of economics. Yeah, sure, he was that, with so much more. I mean, his first book that he's even more proud is Theory of Moral Sentiment. Is an ethical argument, basically among people and stuff, and it's really good book. Wealth was his what's it called, Wealth from Nations was actually later on. He was not as proud of that as the. But anyway, he was quite concerned about specialization and thought school is the only way to sort of mitigate the effects on character and sort of width of knowledge and stuff, because the economic world forces us to be these cogs in the machine that makes us extremely specialized, which is necessary for the economy to move on, but we'll be so handicapped in our decision making. So for the real rulers of society, you have to be really multifaceted in your decision making and have a really wide understanding of the world. And I went, I mean, I've taken some paths that's really. I went to an extremely prestigious school in Sweden, the most prestigious school in Sweden, and I don't regret that. But I didn't finish, and I don't regret that either because it was really, really. Oh, someone's calling. I have to call back later on, I guess. I went to an extremely prestigious school and did not continue because I thought it was even better alternatives in life. And even better than that is, at least if you think in terms of career, making money, whatever. Yeah, but you also have to be quite bold and confident in it, and that's why it's sort of sensitive, sort of, to speak about, because you don't want to come off as too cocky, and you definitely it's not only coming off as too cocky. You don't want to be that for yourself. You have to have a level of humility in order to advance in life. I mean, if you're not just going around and think you're the best in the world and not deserve to think that of yourself, you're just going to punish yourself because you're not going to learn from other people. Understand that you can learn from everyone else, because there are always going to be people with skills that you don't have that are better in different fields and stuff. And so yeah, it's a tricky thing, but yeah. So I went and did quite of this multidisciplinary path that Charlie Munger recommended, and I've never regretted it an inch. It really made my understanding made so much for my understanding that it's insane. I mean, the things I know and understand now and many of these things are things that I portray in these videos, and try to distill and understand the world, the current state we're in its history, what's needed for us, as how sort of biologically primed, evolutionary primed organism, and what makes it tick in our how the world we live, the modern world today, how it would have to perhaps tweak some things, and yeah, many things that are hard to. Well, I don't have perfect solutions. I aim on doing something extremely big. I have quite insane ambitions as well, but that's another topic. But just because I think it's a duty to try, and if I don't mean insane in that sense that I think it's extremely probable that I will succeed, but I'll try to do something on the way of that, like in that direction, because someone should do it. I mean, the bigger the better. If it's good, it's just the bigger better. So, and most of those things I've actually, many of these videos are quite, I don't remember really. They're sort of wide in topics, but yeah, they are. Again, hard to think about, but I mean, not as someone would have to know if it's the case that they sort of picked me as someone who's just deserves it, or sort of should be affected by this extreme nasty thing, which is good, I guess, in the long run. Perhaps I'm just punished. I don't know why I would be punished. I just want to do good things, and no, I'm not punished. It's sort of this some sort of intention in this that's long term good, but they would have to, if they really want to pick something, do something, and they have to pick someone and just affect them in some way. You have to evaluate them, and since I happen to know or suspect at least that some of these actually know things on sort of on own things or own sort of YouTube and stuff. I mean, they have because I mean, how would anyone, if take anyone, it doesn't have to be me, but if you sort of notice someone, how would you notice them, and how would you sort of, because I've done, because I'm very on, what should you put it? I had many years when I basically skipped like the classical way of going forward in life and doing education. I took my own education very seriously, and I thought that that's the, like, in the internet and to now you can just go to the top, to the best people in any subject, and just, and they have, I mean, people can see, like YouTube for example, they can see how behavior is. I guess I would say that since I have so much spare time, I guess they could see that I investigate really complicated topics on important issues and stuff. But I mean, it's really hard to, again, because you don't want to think too high of it. I can't understand why the heck someone would do this if I was not extreme in some sense. I do know for sure that I have some really, not to say bad qualities, but I have some skills that on a very very low level, so to speak. Where I'm sort of, we all have our battles in life, so to speak. We're things that we're not good at, and I have those, and that's perhaps one way to justify thinking so highly of myself or whatever, however, because I really can't wrap my head around it. Why the heck would someone maybe just pick someone who was a bit interesting? Maybe it's not that extreme that I'm super in some way, but it's happening, and it's I want to understand it, and I want to understand why the heck they picked me. And this perhaps there are other people as well. I really don't know. And perhaps some intelligent people see this and think, well, let's figure out if this is the case, and they just will go through my videos and understand, well, this is sort of reasonable. I am not super optimistic that that will actually happen, but yeah. But I do my best on, and I actually have to be completely honest. It's actually very rare for people to go like in depth in these type of topics and sort of make connection between different academic disciplines. And that's actually what I do. There are people who do it, and there are of course a lot of things that I do not know for sure. But yeah, it's like the Charlotte Munger thing that you after a while can just walk down the island and think, and just to look to the right and to the left and say, "My heavenly days," and what the heck he said. I just become, which I think it says something like, I just become the most accomplished people in person, most accomplished people in my age cohort, or something like that. But yeah, never mind. I get really sick of this. It feels very, very weird speaking of yourself. So yeah, I guess that's, unless perhaps I'm going to end this video, or I'll just go to another topic. But to end on the humility level, to just say that yet I know that this could be very sort of overestimating myself, or sort of because I think, oh, is that usually the safe thing, to keep the humble, let's say, attitude of just know that you're not great at everything. You can have skills, but you're not superhuman, really. Like, although I think there's we're going really deep. I think there are specters in the human, or should you put a human emotional sphere that have as its roots has in its roots has an opening from the deepest question of philosophical puzzles, let's say, like why there is consciousness, why is there anything there, something that rather than anything that sort of open up the possibility of of not unnatural, but sort of things beyond our understanding that's going on in the world and about ourselves that we don't even understand. That's not does not make me does not make us superhumans, but I mean we don't know what capabilities there are because we don't know how things work. It doesn't mean I don't believe in science. Of course, I think I mean, yeah, always when I try to make decisions, I mean maybe it's just wishful thinking that's there's some things, but I mean if you're really into the depths of human, how should you put it, experience, and you recognize what a puzzle, sort of a mystery, deepest philosophical levels, what a mystery life and existence really is. Why the heck is there something rather than nothing? Why do you ever have a consciousness? And I have actually quite difficulty with people just say that, well, it's just gradually happening. I mean, that's not an explanation. You're unintelligent if you just think it just happens. We don't understand it. It's so, and that's, I mean, consciousness is connected to emotions, and it's yeah. So it's definitely a puzzle, and just happened to. The reason I mentioned it is because I think that we should not because I said something that could sound as if I'm sort of want to trivialize all things that we have and stuff to just I don't know. And this is sound weird if you have not thought about this topic before, and if you're not deep into philosophy of sort of doubting them, we can doubt anything really. We don't have this sort of solid foundation, perfect foundation for anything really. We have solid foundation in science. That's the best thing we can have, but it just allows for so much that we don't know that it's hard to grasp human potential actually and emotional sort of spectra. But I think that I still think it's like science. It's always the way to go about it. That's the way, or some method that way might even be beyond science. We don't know about that, but we should still sort of first and foremost respect the scientific process. And if there's something that sort of fine tunes the scientific process, it's good. But yeah, that's just wild speculations. But I still think there's something there that could be that we should not shut off in the spirit of science just as something something dumb. And or I mean it should be dumb in most of the case because we should be well aware of what we wish to think is true. But since there's so many on the deepest levels of rational thinking and sort of philosophy, I mean you can't just throw it away and think you know that this is how trivial the human consciousness is. I mean, you could make an argument for that. No, I shouldn't go into this. But you could really make an argument in the opposite direction that we think so highly of ourselves that it has to be something significant about consciousness, but it's actually not. It just happen to be. We are just so hard to grasp that we're conscious because we want to think so highly of ourselves. So yeah, I don't want to go into that topic really. It's quite messy, and I would probably sound half insane to those who are not able to understand the actual argument. So yeah, I'm really on the fence here. I don't really want to continue this video. I think but I have a habit of pushing these videos quite far because it usually makes me really that's by the way why I have some of these videos that are sort of 3 hours long with 30 minutes breaks where I'm just sort of blanking, because that's, I guess that's one of my tics, one of my, that I try to really push myself and stuff. I'm actually quite high. I should really have to eat something, but I could also just push it. Because what's interesting, as I mentioned in another video, most people underestimate their math capability because they underestimate how much patience it takes to feel dumb until you actually figure out what the heck, how you should solve the math. I think it's quite similar with these videos, that half the battle is just doing it and sort of continue to try to sort of pushing yourself to do more. I mean, it is quite interesting what happens in your brain when you for a long time speak, and then just you get tired for a while, and then but if you continue, see what the heck that your brain pops up in your brain and what it starts to discover. I mean, it could also be sort of a self-discovery thing. You be aware of what thoughts you have, and as I've talked about in another video about opportunity cost of thoughts, basically thinking about, I don't know, what microwave I'm going to buy when I need a new one. It's a sort of marginal utility of how long you should think about that. It's sort of utility in sort of, I don't mean in economic terms, I just meaning as a basic concept of, I mean, to not thinking about it at all is probably not good, because you buy a bad, ugly one. But after a while, it diminishes the value of every second you think about it. So the opportunity cost becomes higher because you can't think about something that's more important. I don't know, friends, academic models that helps you accomplish more in life, or initiatives that you're going to do your life in your business or in your career, or just get a better life in, I mean, anything that's more fruitful. And this comes from a standpoint of sort of wanting to optimize. I mean, sort of extreme in perfect summation. If someone says, well, you can be too perfect about stuff, don't take life so seriously, I think that's true. I really think it's true that you can't take life too seriously. Or you could be in the mode of taking it too seriously, too much, but it's actually a serious question. Because then you're saying it's important that you don't take life too seriously. But if you really think it's important that you don't take life too serious, you sound really serious about that. And so that's it sounds as a play on words, but it's actually not. I mean, I think it's so more about sort of attitude. Because I'm really serious about not being serious all the time. Yeah, that's true. That's a good way to put it, because you need to be jolly and have fun and stuff. But yeah. But the reason I talk about opportunity cost of thoughts and just picking the right ones, and make sure you think about things that fruitful, and usually it comes to science and understanding the world and what you can do for a better world and stuff. Understanding your strengths, so you get involved in something that you have strengths in, so you have a capacity to do something, to build skills, to build on that contribute. No, I completely lost it. Sorry. But it's still interesting what happens, except from just being tired and lost your train of thoughts, and it gets messy. It's still interesting what happens in your brain for a while when you do deep. And yes, again, become aware of your own thoughts and understanding what's relevant to focus on. What do you actually have in your brain? I mean, the answer to that is, well, what you have in your brain is what comes up when you talk a lot. So, or if the other way around, what you talk about shows what you're thinking about, at least for other people. When people hear you talk, it sort of betrays your, should you put it, how smart you are or how dumb you are. I guess. That's not super kind to resist. There are many people with not insane thinking skills that are really good people. And that perhaps sometimes even more important. I should not say more important because, well, it's another discussion, but basically to do something really, really good or really, really ethical, moral in this world, it's not enough with a good intention. And it's not enough with only skills. You have to have both. You have to have really, really good intention, and you have to really, really, really good skills. Because if you have only really, really good intention and even immense power, you can do stuff that's, if you do the wrong stuff, but you think it's good. I don't know. Communism is a good example of that. People starve and die. Or on the other one, if you have extreme competence, let's say, I don't know if it's the best example, but take the Nazis, pretend they're really, well, they were skilled in some things for sure, war, but I don't think it's the Nazis the best example, but they are a really shitty moral compass. So they have tons of skills, or any sort of really good entrepreneur or capitalist. Now I think capitalism in general have a checking was a balancing factor, or sort of a, because you can only make money if you sell stuff. People need to buy it, and can't force people to buy it. Well, you're doing something illegal basically. So it's but you can trick people to buy stuff, and that's sort of, well, it's basically sort of illegal, I guess. It should be. Well, I mean, well, that's complicated, but the capitalistic system at least forces you to sell something that other people want to buy, and that's sort of one way to check for that. But it still happens that, of course, many examples of people who are very skilled and ambitious that does not have a good moral compass. So they don't have a good intention. They are only skills on that. So you have to have both, and I think that's very sort of important to think about, and sort of, yeah, because there are many examples of things failing in that respect, sort of. But maybe I'll go into, well, that's a little bit the purpose of life. No, that's a bit overdone, perhaps, I don't know, but or why this is actually quite interesting if you think about what is it that if you have, I'm just blanking because I'm tired, so sorry for that, but think about it. I mean, you can take this from the sort of deepest philosophical level of just why there's something or anything. Why is there consciousness? Why is not the world just the solar system and all the universe, and like on Mars with no life, or I don't know, maybe been life on Mars, we don't know, but why is it just rock and that's it? Now you're here, you have a life. If you really think about it on the sort of, not so well, I get on from the philosophical life approach as sort of but also as sort of a mystery. But just think about, and this is usually an argument I have for sort of going through some tough times. If you're sort of, some people are quite depressed, and I actually think this is a good sort of, if you're really talking about dark subjects, like for example people who are suicidal, and sort of, I sort of thought about this, and it's quite, but if you really talk about, if you want to find some sort of what works for me, and which usually is something that I sort of distilled, let's say, from these videos, I usually come back to some sort of, I mean, if you really think about it, to be alive, if you compare that to be dead, first of all, it seems quite simple, but it's like, what the heck? You're it is, and it's hard to. I mean, usually when you think about it, like some sort of gurus meditation stuff can sound quite sort of cheesy or sort of say, oh, appreciate life, we appreciate that you're alive. It's a miss, and sometimes that can come off as sort of what do you call it, woo sort of. You're like, okay, well, that's silly, but. And I don't know how many, if I should classify that as sort of when that happened, when I hear people, maybe they have sort of a very interesting take, because when I think about it, I think about it I want to believe I think about it in a slightly different way, but perhaps I come off as the same way, I really don't know. But if you really think about it, I mean, you'd rather be dead, even if you're in a lot of pain. I mean, some people go through an immense amount of pain and suffering, but what I think, even if I imagine sort of being a lot in pain, I mean, you will rest when you die, but just so if I take it from the perspective of being really, really, I mean, just to see, there's so many interesting things in life that if you don't really contemplate them deeply, or sort of have a sort of a hope of, like for me, I've been through some rough times, but what never left me has been the hope, and I always thought of, there's so many interesting things in life, really. I've always been sort of thought of myself as not being someone who's I have difficult to satisfy myself in the sense of feeling that. That's why I'm pushed to sort of seeking some sort of, not an extreme in life, I don't know how to put it, but I don't want like a cut and clear normal life. I want something different, because it's interesting. It's not satisfying. It's like, I don't know, playing a video game that's boring. I don't want to play video games boring. I don't want to live a life that's boring. So, and that's probably why I've sort of so I'm quite challenged in feeling satisfied, but that's also why I've been sort of thought out sort of way to sort of think about it, which is like extremely motivating for me to. I mean, there's so many. You have a life that's can be so full of experiences and amazing things and accomplishments that it's, I mean, just will sound cheesy, but the blessing of to just like have the opportunity to craft your own life, to make something extraordinary, or at least try to, or just it's really easy to get stuck in for at least for some people to get stuck in sort of negative ways of viewing life. But if you really think about it, and going back to my sort of, now I'm very how should you put it, very careful in many ways. I sort of think things through thoroughly, but I have a quite strong, deep in me, very strong thrill seeking. That is actually a sort of, some of these things are genetically primed, sort of, that you have thrill. You really want something extra in order to be satisfied. So this is not just speculation. I actually seem to have some of these genes that makes it's harder for me to feel satisfied. So and that's usually connected with thrill seeking behavior. You really want that rush. You really want it. But I have I really think things through, so I'm not just very much, I don't act on it, but I still have a really strong sort of drive in want to, and that I know not everyone is the same, and so it's hard to, but I think everyone has some sense of really thinking about finding something that thrills you about life, that seems makes it interesting. Oh, I need to fix my lamp. That's really, and I think it just helps. I mean, I usually get back to that attitude when I do these videos. So I don't know why, but I guess it's because I think it's important as a topic to find what you think is important in life to do and what's in line with your talents and stuff. But I've been talking about this before in my old videos. But that's, I mean, it's such a loss not appreciating that, or at least not, yeah, and trying to make something out of that, so to speak. Trying to make something. Well, and it's, I mean, it's really good if you think about it. If you think about what it actually means, it means that you're the most, that you focus on what's the most motivating thing to be focused on, so to speak. I mean, if you really want to be motivated, you think about what's motivating. And if you think about what you actually can accomplish, what kind of life you can live, it's hard to not be motivated by that. So it's really about focusing on the things that makes your imagination go haywire. I don't know, to make your imagination, yeah, it's, but this is not necessarily an argument for, I mean, this is, if you actually go deep on these type of things, you have to be humble for the reality of that, your own, like thinking about these things. Like for example, if I view a video like this and feel motivated by it, I think, oh, that's true. You actually need to realize that the reason you feel like that, or you understand it, it's, my point is, when you've heard something that's motivating, unfortunately, it's not always that when you think back on it, that you feel motivated again. Because it's not enough, really. So you have to have, even though I think this is extremely important to remind yourself of, you also have to realize there are many factors that influence, for example, how you feel, how motivated you are. And like for example, now I happen to talk about this topic. What's the reason that I'm doing that? I've found that one reason I do it is just because, well, I happen to be quite engaged in subjects when I talk for a long time. I feel these monologues makes me sort of, yeah, everyone is built to speak. What does that mean? Well, we are actually. I mean, that's sort of the most critical thing about human beings. Like, oh yes, for sure, our intelligence, but it's connected with our ability to communicate. So it's deeply, that's why many people feel like talking. No, I happen to be quite introverted, so for me it's quite, gives a lot to do this sort of speeches, because that allows me to focus on what I think is interesting, and I usually don't jack into all type of conversation other people think about, and so that's yeah, that's why it's good for me. But the reason that I brought up this, that there are other factors. I mean, like for example, if I had messed a lot with my other things in my life that would make me not really that feel that well, then the likelihood of me having as much enthusiasm or feeling as good about this topic as I do now would not be the case. So there are many factors that influence, like sort of how you move, your motivation, and so it's like, you know, the place you work, what you eat, healthy food for sure, if you exercise, I just want to make that sort of caveat to not think that it's a thing that solves everything. Even if you're sort of a happy person and just get an extra kick, or not that, it's sort of it's not it does not solve everything, but it solves a lot to be focused on the right thing. And one right thing to be very focused on is to understand, get a sound perspective on life, understanding the possibilities in it, and sort of getting back to, and that's too, getting back to just as a discussion about in many of these videos on just not skipping the foundation of what the heck your life is. There are many times you can see people on the internet sort of getting sort of a revelation of, oh, this is how I'm going to live. I, for example, skipped career and this and just completely did something else, and I get, what is it, enlightened, and sort of sometimes sort of in a spiritual way, and that's perhaps good. I think it is. Usually those people have found what works for them, and I think in general that's sort of a good, really good thing, even though you personally might not sympathize exactly with what they say, or think it's sort of, well, that's not enough for me to be motivated, or feel that I've found the right thing in life. But to make that effort into investigate those things is sort of foundation for your own development. Because usually I think what happens is you pick sort of the wrong career, or you pick sort of the wrong place to work, or people around you, or whatever it is. I mean, we're not, yeah, it works fine, but I mean, there are many things in your normal working lifestyle that I think it's quite a very difficulty understanding of how people can stand it. I mean, it's not strange that people feel like, this is not the lifestyle I want if you go to the normal work. I mean, I think it's quite, I can't live like that. I can do it for periods, but it's like, that's not my life. And that also allows me to be even more ambitious. It's high risk, that's always the case if you're trying to do something great. But yeah, so just get to the bottom of how do you work best, what motivates you, what's your strengths, and sound like a bloody therapist. That's not my job here. Or well, that perhaps that's great if that could be an side, what's it called, side effects. Yeah, one among many effects of these videos. Yeah, what more? Pushing it 2 hours. Yeah, I like this. It's to be a bit stubborn. And well, let's talk, speaking about stubborn, about things that's quite, now I think I'm quite extreme in doing these sort of long-term videos, but I think I do not feel extremely embarrassed by them, because I think I actually learn a lot, and I think I get an opportunity to really go deep on topics that I think it's, well, first of all, I've said before, I learn to speak, I learn to think better. It's actually usually more clear when you're speaking, and rather than just thinking. Writing is amazing too, but speaking, I think, is even great, even deeper in sort of our human nature, so to speak. Now I forgot what I was going to speak about. But yeah, that's usually what happens after a while in these videos. Something really looked forward to speak about. Yeah, action. And as I said, I think it's quite extreme in doing this type. Most people would definitely not be comfortable doing it. That's why I sort of not published until recently, because it's quite yeah, it's sort of embarrassing if you know what the heck am I doing, but what the hell, someone might need it. And someone can tell me I'm insane if I'm doing it, and it's like, okay, but I don't want to be normal. Do you want to? Sorry for the cockiness, because I actually don't appreciate being too normal. I think you have to stand out and do different things in order to be, I don't know, something. It's not interesting enough. You shouldn't, as I was talking about in another video, you shouldn't avoid average to the bad side, but you should avoid average to the good side. You should be better, contributing more to the world, doing something really good stuff. Just because you're odd and doing something different doesn't have to be it's bad. It can be, but if it's good, it's usually, I mean, unfortunately, when you do really good stuff that's odd, different, but still really good, people are going to look like, oh, what's that? And that's just how it is. But so one sort of recurring thing for my brain is that I'm very, very introspective, sometimes really good, deep into topics, learn stuff. And the side consequence of that is action is not my biggest strength. Usually, I can take big action, and so that's a topic that I think is interesting to discuss, really. And it's for me right now, it becomes more complicated in the context of all these things, this big extreme prank. That makes some of my actions sort of, it actually inhibits me in some ways. And that's not something I like. It also helps me in some ways, but and I have to still this sort of subtle promise that this is going to result in something great, but I can just blindly trust it. And so usually I just be, and until recently it's usually been I can perform. I still want to do really good things, but there's some things that makes it as if I don't really want to perform, and this is very, very odd because I've always been in that sort of I don't know, there's a don't know if I should go into this, and that's probably the worst thing with all this, because there's some factors in it that's actually sort of makes it as if I perform more, at least in some areas, good, it will actually be worse. And that's something that's, I'm not sure if that's the case, but that's sort of how I've been thinking about it for a long time, for a time at least. And that's, so I don't know. But usually, like I'm super oriented toward like accomplishing something, and I mean the more you, and that's, by the way, the most, if you're talking about, there's a discussion about toxic masculinity and toxic femininity. At least I think we should discuss, but that's not the subject of this. I mean, there are toxic people everywhere, and good people. But if you're talking about toxic mentality in general, then it is my view, it's come partly from envy, but can also be good intentions that sort of makes people think wrong about this. But it doesn't matter how sort of, how should I put it? The absolute strongest responsibility you have as a human being, in my opinion, is to do good. I mean, that's sort of foundational. But what's bad with much of, even people who share that view, is that they, as soon as someone does something really amazingly great, they start to get into the mode of, hey, why do you deserve to have so much power and influence mode? And when they go into that, it sounds as if they're jealous. They don't understand what's behind that enormous contribution, and start to pick on people who have done amazing things for the world. And that for me is like, are you so blinded by your envy that you think that extremely accomplished people suddenly becomes bad? I mean, yeah, some people that are very, very accomplished and have extreme success in life when it comes to money, influence, power, can be quite bad people, for sure. That happens. But to just assume as soon as some person have extreme power or success with a company, for example, to switch to sort of an envy, or you should rationalize them as bad people when you should many times rather admire them as have done something hugely great for society. I mean, that's, now I'm saying this as a person who's very hard, as a, well, I see myself at least someone who's very hard to impress. Not because I'm sort of cocky or think high of myself. I guess I'm not impressed by myself, or but I have this sort of thrill seeking, or sort of I really want something more. Like, I mean, it's a boring world to live in. Since I say, why not just make it extremely motivating and fun instead? That's part of like my own challenge to do for my life. I mean, start with yourself, but in general, the world, why do we not? I don't know. We should be schooled in that capacity. Anyway, now see how this goes. Always forgetting where I was going at, but completely blanked. Not top quality sleep, to be honest. So that's an excuse that's valid, I guess. But yeah, something more. Yeah, depends on how long I want to make this video. Can always continue. Break a record, 5 hours. Free to go. I'll see about that. When do you pass the line from being different to just crazy weird? No, but maybe I'll there are many things that go through my brain, just sort of having a good time things that I think most people value extremely much, and I do too, although the way I usually behave, well, there are many ways I'm going into this topic, but and I don't know the best angle. I mean, one way to go about it is sort of the value of just having a happy time. Introduction of Lord of the Rings happened to pop up in my mind as sort of like the Hobbits just having a good time. I don't know why that's popped up, but it did. But yeah, many movies, and just you can think of circumstances in your whole life. That's something that I think is extremely valuable, and sort of it does so much good for yourself, that it's just have a good time with family and friends is so important. Now I'm just trying to make up my mind, I guess, around this, because I have a side in myself that's sort of how should you put it, very, I guess it goes back to this really want something different and extreme, that I have a sort of just having a good time is not good enough. It's like if the Lord of the Rings movie would only be about the hobbits having a good time. I'm sort of in that. I'm usually more in that perspective, sort of. Is there some? This is boring. Let's do some amazing shit. Something. So not just you only have a good time. I mean that's. I'm saying this as a person who deeply appreciates it, and usually it's like most of the time I feel an strong urge to have even more of it. That's what I like. We all like it. Every single person who's not basically like to have a good time with other people. I mean, it's just that's how we're wired. We're built for being a tribe. Much more on. Usually, even the family is too little to. We're more like sort of a clan or sort of a tribe thing. But it's not always practical to live more than a family, and usually we live in even alone in our household. And I think it's just that's a bad thing, but it's a consequence of some level of individualism, and it's and so I think, but yeah, I don't know, maybe this sort of dynamic of going from having a good time with just people to make something extraordinary would be solved if I don't know. I mean, some people figure out and do their thing, and I think that's great. But I think it's quite, as I've said, like these Örebro shootings that were this guy. We're not forced to sort of socialize that much in our society. You can make it on your own, and you're not pushed into sort of. And I think that's sort of a bad thing because the people of influence and stuff, they don't really see that aspect, I think. And usually they're not very bright. I shouldn't be arrogant here, but and I think usually many of those things that sort of automatically ends up in getting together, getting to have a good time, and then going over into what the heck are we going to do? Can we do something interesting? And then going to this sort of thrill mode of whoa, that would be great to do. That is sort of inhibited. It gets not hijacked, but it gets disturbed so much because we're not the same tribe. We have one sort of mini tribe in the family, one mini tribe at work, and it sort of works, kind of. And for those who have it reasonably well figured out, they don't understand how they are still inhibited. Like they're living on this. They might even think they're a great life, but they're sort of a 7 out of 10 on what it could be if you compare it to just be living in a real tribe, sort of. So the modern society is not like perfect, but yeah. But for those lower than that, lower than 7, then it really affects people. And so I guess if the average is 5, it's still like, then that's good. Think about how many people who is 1, 2, 3, 4, half the population, and I only think you probably need to be a sort of, maybe you just need 5 or something like that to feel like, yeah, it's right, it's good, but that's sort of, there's something that's disturbed there, I think, that was not in our history. We have all the other things today instead, but yeah, I don't know really about this argument. It's I don't know really what I'm trying to get at. It's sort of hard to describe because I really think there's something to it, but at the same time I think, well, maybe isn't that there's something else, another source to this problem, reason? Yeah, I don't know, but what more? I don't know if I should go back to this prank thing. It's so weird. It's so it really is. And there's. Now I happen to live my life, but it's like, imagine yourself. Just different things that happen on the internet. Some people pretend to be someone and they're not. And then you get sort of death threats. Learn that you're basically sort of, that was the beginning and it was just a month, but it was quite challenging. And then going from that to understanding who's behind it, going to, you thought that the initial people that you sort of get in contact with, that before you know who was behind it, just these people were behind the prank and then when you sort of want to sort it out, to meet them, they were not. And so they doesn't know who, why. And when, I mean, well, then I was not bold enough to speak about it, so I guess I have to blame myself. But anyway, they would not believe me anyway, so it's like, yeah. And on top of that, knowing that this has been planned to be ongoing for such a long time, and understanding why is this thought out for so long, and just, I don't know, it's really messy. And time is ticking, and I don't think, I always sort of, I don't know, it's really weird. I don't really, usually I don't want to think about it too much. I want to live my life, and I have not received any sort of kind of positive thing out of it, as far as I can see. So it's really weird if there's not a positive twist of it. Why would it otherwise be? I mean, it's weird as heck. I didn't even think I would be much more ahead in life if I had just, if it had not happened. So that's why I think there has to be sort of a twitch or sort of a pivot in it, or some revelation, or what do you call it, reward or purpose, something good out of it. Because I don't have a really hard time of thinking those who are behind it as not oriented to make something good. And despite their asinine behavior in doing this. So really is a mystery. And as I think, part of the prank is, I think, the challenge, if for me to go with this as something that affects me, that I can't really persuade other people happening because I'll sound insane, and that's something to bear. But as long as I can always do what I want, so that's the beauty of it, I guess. But when all these things happens that are sort of, yeah, and especially there are many parts of this yeah, something else. I really start to get tired. I usually don't do these extremely long versions always, and I don't know, starting to lose energy here. Maybe good enough is perfect. I mean, this is still a really long video. So I guess I'll just some different things that I go through my mind that's sort of I'm a bit concerned, but I think I talked about this in another video, what I sort of thought about, or what is even this? No, it was another So when you evaluate people on the basis of what you see on the internet, I realize how even, yeah, I don't know, it's hard to sort of describe how much of yourself that is portrayed in, but I realize that it's a quite narrow dimension of my own personality and way of how I, like, for example, I think I don't know, there's something that's in these monologues that I have here, I've had after a long time, I'm sort of it's kind of one-dimensional, so to speak. And I sort of try to distill or distinguish what the heck it is, and I don't know why. It's as if I can't really decide. It's as if I, like, for periods in this, I've thought of myself as someone who, some of these videos I thought of, well, am I really that timid in when I interact with people? As when I watch this afterwards, and the other times it was, if am I really that? Why am I so cocky? That's not the real me. I'm a kind guy in interactions, and it's like, it's as if there is, I can't really evaluate how I'm being perceived, but it's more as if it's, yeah, sort of one dimension. I mean, there's so much into human interaction that's more than just monologue. I mean, yeah, I think you can learn a lot about hearing someone speak, but this very, I mean, just seeing someone interact with other people, how they react, how they what the response is to someone else being kind, being rude, whatever it is, or just how you can navigate in conversation, how you take responsibility for the conversation to go in a fruitful direction. I mean, invaluable, extremely important skills. And how you communicate with others to make them feel uplifted or happy, or just if you bring out your jolly, happy side, if you're speaking confidence. Yeah, like I don't know what it is. It's as if it's very one-dimensional. It's just, if I'm really very critical here, it's just me talking with some type of confidence that I do have, but I also sort of want to tone down a little. I mean, it gets quite serious in this conversation. I guess that's why. I mean, usually when you're around with people, you're having a good time. Many aspects to human interaction that's very important, that does not sort of, how should you put it? I think that's why if you see people, I mean, even if you imagine these, well, this is not funny actually. I mean, I think they had something in Czechoslovakia or something, I don't remember, when that still existed, sort of a place where children brought up in isolation, never talking to anyone, and how they sort of became, that they didn't work at all as human beings. It was like they didn't work as human beings at all, and what it makes to your brain to not be around people. And that, I mean, I think something would be solved if they had done perhaps some type of the video, but I'm just pointing at here that what it makes to not be sort of around people, and how important that is for human interaction and so forth, and how crucial that is. But it's also crucial to sort of take your own path, going deep down, exactly what you want, shift if you're not suitable for that tribe or job or whatever it is. But just, I guess that's why some of these, I perceive that these videos going too much in sort of a one mode way, because usually when you speak with people, I think there's a lot of unconscious thing going on, and that's probably why I can sort of notice it after a while at least, because you don't get the feedback. I mean, when you're communicating with people, you have sort of a response as you unconsciously sort of process that, and your brain compensates for something that perhaps there's you get some hint of that this was not something that's stuck or it was perceived as bad or different or very good, and you got a feedback in it. But when you're just talking for yourself, you can just go on and on in the same mode, and there's nothing stopping you. And you can, I mean, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. I mean, we're trained through our whole lives in how to interact. So I mean, it won't come off as like, but and that is primed or sort of formed all of us. So when everyone is going to pick up the phone and do a video, they will be prepared to sort of. But I guess it's still, and I mean, there are amazing speeches that have been made from people just talking for hours and hours for sure. But I guess it's, take Martin Luther King, just "I have a dream" speech. Do you think when he's sitting down with your friends, he says, "I have a dream"? I mean, and of course it was pushed into he was not having these types of speeches that I have right now, but it is something different. And that's why, for example, I think that I'm sort of specialized in one thing I'm going deeper into is sort of marketing and presentation, how important that is for video advertising stuff, and just be able to speak to a camera into, so that you can sell people stuff in a good way, honest of course, and when you want to help people, that's how you sell good stuff. What did I say that? Start to get tired, but you basically want to sell something that's good for people. Otherwise, yeah, why sell them? But yeah, where were I? Yeah, so I have sort of I've thought about this, and it's really different to some people are really good at selling to, like, in video style, just, or like for an audience in general. It's not too different between video and just an audience, but just monologue wise. And other people are better at sort of in more interactive, sort of you sitting with someone, having an interaction, and try to persuade them in sort of a back and forth mode. And that's not exact same skill, and that's probably why, yeah, I don't know, different modes of being. I mean, when you're talking to a crowd compared to sort of a video, recording a video, unless there's sort of many people on the set and stuff, you get some feedback. So that's, I guess, is a little different. But laughter, applause, or just booing, I don't know. But when you have talking to someone, you have a face and a whole body to sort of read and get sort of impression, is the person appreciating this or not. And that's different from only just talking to having a monologue. And I guess your sort of repertoire or your width of interaction gets sort of narrowed down, because even if you're thinking about Martin Luther King's speech, it's quite, well, I'm not sure how long it is, but you could even say it's sort of quite narrow. It's really much I have a dream. I mean, it's not of a conversation. Conversation is more dynamic, not just in the sense of it's one and another person, there's more than one person. It's more dynamic in the sense there's reading the other person and reacting to that, and sort of having a sense of how that is perceived. And I just happen to think about this that happened with this sort of prank at the 100th month after I enrolled in the program that it was supposed to be 67 days, but happened to be pranked me and just ended up some years later. And after 67 months, at least made me do something weird. And then the 100th month again, just recently, like that, for that resulted in one person being really sort of angry. And that's like, now I was extremely tired of this. I didn't sleep well for so I usually don't have that problem with sleep, but then I had many days have quite bad. So I was actually surprised of myself being Well, I guess if I had not been, I would have been more or well, let's put it, dynamic in my response, being more sort of able to turning around to something more positive, even though it was really like offensive and hostile towards me. It was still like, for me, I could. For me, it was quite easy to just be calm and trying to explain stuff, and I don't know how. I want to think that I was quite good at it. I mean, people are different, have different skill, and I don't know what should you do. I mean, it's not like you're going to be scared. Some people will, me, but it's still like most people I think would handle it quite well. I don't know. I'd be a little upset, but for me it was. But I think if I had not been so, because I actually think that's quite a big contributing factor how good you are. I even have some business leaders said if you feel really bad someday and you have an important meeting, it's best to just find another time because it's important. And I think sleep is one of the most essential thing for high performance in your skills in whatever. I remember sort of one time I was really exhausted and was it high school? I had not slept for. I was quite trained too hard. I think in my athletics, trained every day and stuff. And I really remember feeling this is not. And we have sort of ping pong was a plane, so you went down if you did better, and you went up if you drew better. And I remember I was constantly I lost every. I don't consider myself bad at ping pong. I mean, it was a whole class, and I was worst. And I've never been bad at that sport. I might not be amazing, but I've been average. And not played much, but who many have plays a lot of ping pong. I mean, even including Lars. And I was worst. Continually, always losing. So always at the worst end of it. And for me, when I was, what the heck is happening? Yeah, it was really embarrassing. And the thing was, the trainer. This is where the next course in what do you call it? In sports, sort of, you choose that as an extra course in sports in high school. Yeah, so I actually chose that. Okay, there could be some indications that others were good, but I consider myself quite good at sports, and I mean just being so bad. And the most embarrassing thing was at the last place where you played when you were the worst. That was the trainer that was the teacher. So that was quite embarrassing to always. And I think he sort of. I got my best grade anyways, but it was but that was embarrassing. I was quite worried. I think he just figured, okay, he's not good at ping pong. But but I now realize that was probably because I was extremely exhausted and I just sort of overtrained my sort of the cognitive abilities, maybe reflexes are most affected by that. I don't know, but because and I think it impairs your cognitive. I mean, sleep is so extremely important for mental function. So it's that's on the way, because I've never been. I mean, I've played ping pong after that, and I'm not extremely good. But when I played with people who played about even played much more than me, I still do quite fine. But and I remember I felt like I was really exhausted there, and I just figured. So why did I get into that? Yes, how I reacted in this situation. I think I was quite calm, and I think I'd been a better mental sort of state. I would probably have been better to turn. Now I just relied on something, just being quite calm. I've always been able to do that, but it was something I was about to bring up about this. It was a general discussion of sort of how dynamic conversation is compared to just like this monologue, because there and then that's a very good example of how dealing with people, how dynamic it can be. To now I happen to be very sort of boring in my approach to this, but I also think when someone is sort of always yelling at you and being afraid, sort of, I think it's usually, I mean, I've talked about tit for tat in some of these videos, but that you should, I mean, if someone's doing an offense towards you, you should do the same to them, sort of. Well, you should not make people take advantage of you. But as we've also have this saying that an eye for an eye makes the world makes the whole world blind. It's also, and it's sort of the next level on that would be, well, one way to viewing it is turn the other cheek, and I guess that's what I did, sort of. And I could have been sort of pissed off back, and I felt I had some justice for them, because they evaluate me and what happens based on, they think I'm sort of but they don't know that I'm sort of tricked into it. And I also have a sort of good reason I wanted my stuff back, but I made that clear, I hope, and if they don't figure that out, I will make them upset again because I need my things. I'll try to do it in a respectful way, for sure, but I don't want to provoke. But anyway, so it's like many of the ways you can handle it. You can be upset back, you can just be calm, you can try to reassure them that this is nothing. You can even use some charm. I didn't do that at all, even though I have that sort of, I believe I can be quite, have that. Yeah, I have heard people say that I can't have that, but not if, I mean, you shouldn't use charm as a way of, I mean, charm has a sort of a double-edged sword, you could say. I mean, because that could be, if you're so overly charming, you can be perceived as sneaky, and I even myself don't feel comfortable with it, because it seems that if you're, what's the English word, fiesca, or sort of, or just being too it's obvious that you're just being kind to make them like you, even though you don't deserve it. You're playing good, and that's not really that admirable. So it should be used with caution. But I think I could have perhaps tested that, but it can also come off quite cocky, or not as if you respect their. So it's perhaps more of a gamble to do that, yeah, this is just an example of what I was talking about, of this contrast to a monologue that I'm still sort of trying to have a reasonably good discussion here with myself, but not. But I think still there are even more things that comes out when you have the interaction with people. And it's interesting some way to have an interaction, and you read stuff into it. It's not only information flow, it's sort of visual cues that it's not to say that comedy, I mean, you should not overanalyze body language or the tonality, when it's more of a, well, perhaps you should to some extent, I don't know, but it's more, what I'm getting at here is that it's just an unconscious, you read, you see that someone just appears a bit like, it's quite easy from just an expression to read that, okay, that person wants to signal to me that they're skeptical. If someone just goes like, it's quite obvious that you think that the person thinks that, well, that's a bit odd. You really think that? So yeah, there's so much that goes for just, and something we can't even hide, and some things we don't want to hide, and we want to. There's so much to it that's interesting. And well, I don't know if what to continue this, like, yeah, this sequence that just happened in with these people that have been tricked into making contact with it's messy. I don't know what to think. I mean, it's like this sort of one thing of it is way of it, just think it's just a waste of time. Who are they? I don't know, just normal people that I don't need to be interested in having anything to do with, as they apparently don't want to have anything to do with me. So it's, I don't know, but at the same time there's so much pushing from this prank that they're tricking me into taking contact with these people. So I don't know what to think about it. Yeah. actually think this is enough. It's a good habit to do this video, but I guess it's, well, I shouldn't say that the longer I do, the more I feel entitled to not do it again. But at the same time, yeah, I think it can do good. It's sort of marginal utility thing, I think it is. So I mean, the more you do it, it's not necessarily the better. The best thing is sort of like eating. Eating too little is not good. I mean, too little, so you starve, so you die. And then up to a level, it's good, but after a while, it sort of starts to. So, what's the optimal level of length on this type of videos? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that, but I guess this is about right. It's good enough. And I sort of want to end this on at least some constructive or good note. I don't know why, or I do know why, I guess, but I don't know what. It's just a good feeling that you need to. I guess it goes back to just. Yeah. I can't get away from that thought that it's so much that's into human interaction that not sort of, because I usually have not been so self-conscious in these videos. Sometimes I have been, but and it's interesting to evaluate. But I think that it's so interesting to see because there's so much to you, again, to human interaction that really is dependent, or what should I say, distinguished by or affected by just the other person or persons, people that you have in the conversation, and how you sort of navigate that conversation and how you respond. That's not, I guess I'm sort of concerned of how I'm perceived in these videos in general, because I think it's in general is good to be aware of how you're perceived. It's something that we all should think about. I mean, wherever we are. And I just figured how I guess one reason of it is just because I want to sort of understand this extreme prank that I hope someone will have the intelligence to understand that it's actually happening. Maybe I need to give more evidence of it, but it's hard to give everything. But yeah, and even like I want to solve this thing. I want to understand what the reason for it is. It's just, otherwise it's just a waste of time. So I guess it's best thing would actually be if those involved in this, because I don't feel, I just feel like this thing with these people are like, yeah, that perhaps really good people, but are they worth it? Just all this, what the heck? Why do they want? Why do those behind the prank want me to do this? Are they really that valuable, or are they really that deserve to be punished, or whatever it is? And if they're so concerned by this, so they might find this video or anything, then I guess it's just important for me to show that I'm more to a human. Because I guess I'm concerned in how they perceive me, because it's really sort of, they perceive me as something extremely weird. And since I have such a push from this prank, those who rigged this prank, to go towards them, it's as if for me that the solution is there to understand what the heck I am pushed to go into a conversation with them. And for that reason, but since there's a history of tricking me into do stuff that for them is being perceived as extremely weird, it's important for them to get an accurate perception of me, and that's hard to, even if it's extremely valuable, I think, if they've seen this video, because then they realize, oh shit, we got this completely wrong. This is the guy that we perhaps should at least hear what he has to say, because he seemed to be in some weird thing that's, and by the way, they also know that their lives is sort of part way manipulated in some ways. But I mean, I don't know. But I guess I have a concern of sort of being, and I realize not everything, even if it's like night and day, completely different to actually have heard someone talk for a long while, to not like just think I am the is a good, all the things I've done that they've said is a good representation of me, which is definitely it's not. It's like sort of, that's more the extreme effect of sort of, yeah, these people who are behind this are extremely deep into psychology and how the human brain works, so they can really put your button to make you do some extreme things. But so I guess this, if they happen to see this, which I don't dare to hope, even though that would be a really good thing, they would understand, well, this is a guy that needs help. Sounds very I don't like to thinking of that. Sort of, I have some cocky response to that kind of thing. We call it victim code in Sweden. Offerkofta. Think that you're going to need help everywhere, but yeah, I do. I would appreciate enormously if they sort of, if I could get a hint of why I am pushed towards them, because I guess they have some part of the answer, even though if they don't know it themselves. And so it's weird. And I guess you're always, as a human being, worried of not being, I guess no one always want to be too, if you want to take a very one-dimensional spectrum of being too harsh, evil even, or just yeah, whatever it is, to the other side of being too kind or too meek, and there's, I guess that's captured quite a lot of human. But what's even more important is being it in the right situation. And so, I don't know. But it's not only kind, or it's also sort of weird or normal, I guess, which I'm not. I guess I'm perceived on that spectrum as most weird person ever. But yeah, and someone is zooming out as a bigger discussion. Someone said, "Oh, it's not. Can't you be too concerned about these things?" Yeah, it depends. If you decided to make a video and go into topics, deep into topics, I don't think. But it depends on what you do in your spare time, or the rest of your time, I guess. But because I do think it's really important to think about this type of stuff, like how you're perceived, if you're too kind, too harsh. I mean, no one is perfect, so you can always be better. We can get nearer perfection in our way to being to whatever it is. But even more important, being calibrate, so to speak, or sort of have on that dimension the best response to what happens. I mean, basically, if we're kind people, you can be very kind to. But if someone is not that kind, well, you can sort of make them kinder by being kind. But if they're sort of taking advantage of you, you can't be kind. So it's like, yeah. Yeah. I really feel like I have to quit this video now. But I guess, yeah, one more comment on the daring to do something different, daring to do some. I mean, sometimes we say not avoid extremes, just do something balanced. But in order to do something really, really good, you have to do something quite extreme stuff. Not in a bad way, because that's justify extreme actions um, to do something good. In the long run, that's extreme. In the short run, that's basically, I think, a lot of this thing that's they started, which makes it, which is the reason I have a hard time respecting it, because I don't think it is extreme in a good way. But because it is extreme for sure. But but yeah, I still think there's so much more to life than to allow yourself to just live a normal life. As I said before, yeah, for some people that's right, but what the heck? I can definitely not think of life as interesting, or I should not say not worth living, but it's that gives me purpose and drive in life to really think what you can make that's different, that's interesting, that's yeah, and find people who are similar in that really want to make something different. Um, a great drive to do that, and that's yeah. Well, you will never be complete in your portrayal of yourself, so to speak. Um, and yeah, you can definitely be too concerned about it too. It can be quite good to just shake it off and be. It depends on the situation. And by the way, what makes it even more complicated now, I'm I'm talking about who's going to sort of see this, blah blah blah. But I mean, in general, like for example, when I've done many of these videos, it's been sort of enough for myself. But well, maybe I'll publish on everything someday, but who knows if anyone's going to watch. But what's interesting about this is that it's very different to speak. I mean, to speak to one person, to speak to a group of people like you're having a chat with, or to speak to like a broad crowd, like even though it's online, or if it's very different, because you have to sort of calibrate to the one listening. I mean, if you're talking to a very kind person in mode of public speaking, right, like mode, then you will come off as quite rude. If you speak like a public mode, like sort of a neutral to someone who's cocky, or sort of quite maybe even hostile, and sort of you will come off as meek, because in contrast to how that person works, you're not calibrating good in a good way. And that's sort of the challenge here for me. Like for example, these people that I'm sort of concerned that I don't know why, but it's I have to be concerned as long as I sort of buy into the value of this long term. Um, it's it's such a, I guess they're sort of extreme in some way. Really good people, really bad people. Perhaps they don't have to be, but and that makes it like, wouldn't it be the case then that well, to be extreme or to sort of very different, does that necessarily mean that you should be extremely, like I just picked the one dimensional, being too hard, harsh, or being too meek, kind. And I think the most, if someone is really, really good as a human being, they have capacity of both. They can navigate that space, but depending on who they meet. And but yeah, it's so weird. It's so weird, this prank, and it's long. Took 5 years from my sort of 5 to 6 years from I met and went into these programs. And then I was there could be people behind this that sort of found out about me later on, but to many years, and then this happens. And now it's been 3 years. Then is it initiated these people behind Prague and these other people that I'm sort of manipulated or encouraged to take contact with. Yeah, so it's a long time, a lot of money. But I guess I end on that note. Doesn't have to be a perfect ending, but something in my brain that wants me to continue. I don't know what it is. I guess it's just a drive to understand this thing, to whoops, I have food that needs to go into the refrigerator, and it's been 3 hours. That's not a good thing. Better not get food poisoning. That's a terrific ending, isn't it?